Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Elizabeth Fredrickson. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge Lieutenant General Carl-Johan Edström, Chief of Joint Operations Sweden, accompanied by Lieutenant General Greg Bilton, Chief of Joint Operations Australia. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial and students on behalf of Gladstone Park Secondary College from Gladstone Park, Victoria. Staff and students of Gladstone Park Secondary College continue to remember Corporal Cameron Stewart Baird, recipient of the Victoria Cross for Australia and the Medal for Gallantry. Corporal Baird, a former student of the school, tragically lost his life while serving in Afghanistan on the 22nd of June 2013. For those who are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Students and those requiring a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians to understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Captain Lincoln Leopold Bedkober. Lincoln Bedkober was born in Sydney on the 8th of July 1911, the second son of Leopold and Emily Bedkober. He studied dentistry at Sydney University and while there served with the Sydney University Regiment, a volunteer militia battalion. Becoming a qualified dentist, Bedkober purchased a dental practice in Forbes. In 1936, he appointed a locum and travelled to Canada to study a doctorate of dentistry at the University of Toronto. Upon his return in 1939, he took up the dental practice and married his sweetheart, Margaret Bray. The couple had become engaged some years before and planned the marriage to occur in Forbes once Bedkober had received his doctorate. In July 1940, Bedkober was called up for duty in the Second World War. He had served for about 5 months with the Australian Army Medical Corps Dental Service, and his skills would be in high demand. Having been seconded for duty, he was appointed captain, an appointment that would be made substantial in November when he formally enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Shortly before that occurred, however, his wife Margaret died in hospital in Darlinghurst on the 26th of September 1940 following weeks of illness. As Bedkober returned to duty in February 1941, he attended a specialist gas course, joining the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance upon his return in March. Consisting of a headquarters company and 2 deployable companies, the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance consisted of 12 officers and 250 soldiers attached to the 23rd Infantry Brigade in order to provide medical support, including battlefield casualty collection and initial wound treatment. During training in the Northern Territory, members of the 2nd 12th provided medical support, participated in the construction of 5 small medical hospitals, and assisted sappers and pioneer assault units, earning the unit nickname 2nd 12th Pioneers. With the beginning of the Pacific War, members of the 2nd 12th were attached to Gull Force and Sparrow Force and sent to defend the islands of Ambon and Timor, respectively. A grim future lay ahead for them. Those members of the 2nd 12th serving with the Gull Force were captured or killed by the Japanese on the 1st of February 1942, with many dying as prisoners of war on Ambon or Hainan. Many of those who had joined Sparrow Force were also captured. Captain Bedkober, however, would not become a prisoner of war. He was among those members of the 2nd 12th who travelled to Wollongong, where the unit took on more personnel to bring it up to full strength. Finally, the unit was ready to deploy overseas, and in early May of 1943, 3 companies of the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance took the train to Sydney, boarding the hospital ship HMS Centaur on the 11th of May at Darling Harbour. Bedkober and the other members of the 2nd 12th boarded the hospital ship Centaur, headed to relieve the 3rd Field Ambulance in Port Moresby, travelling by way of Cairns. Shortly after 4 a.m. on the 14th of May, while most people were asleep, a torpedo struck Centaur's port side, hitting the oil fuel tank, which ignited a massive explosion. The bridge superstructure collapsed and the funnel crashed onto the deck. Everything was covered with burning oil and a fire quickly began to roar across the ship. Water rushed in through the gaping hole in her side. Many of those on board not killed in the explosion or fire were trapped as the ship started to go down bow first and then broke in 2. In just 3 minutes, Centaur was gone. Of the 332 aboard, there were only 64 survivors, including 15 members of the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance. The survivors were at sea for a day and a half before they were rescued. The ship's crew and medical staff suffered heavily, as did the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance. 178 men from a total of 193 died. It was the nurses, though, who suffered the worst. Of the 12 nurses on board, only one, Sister Neil Savage, survived. Among the dead was Captain Lincoln Leopold Bedkober, who was believed to have drowned. He was 31 years old. During 6 years of service, over 200 members of the 2nd 12th Field Ambulance were killed, the highest figure for a non-combatant unit in Australian history. While the unit would go on to deploy personnel in support of Australian combat operations against the Japanese on Ambon, Timor and in Borneo, the majority of casualties were suffered during the sinking of the Centaur. Lincoln Bedkober's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among the almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Captain Lincoln Leopold Bedkober, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
For those who are able, I now invite you to please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.